So April is most definitely here. It's definitely got warmer outside and there's more daylight hours, and for me there just feels like a real sense of urgency, or maybe it's panic and desperation to get things in the ground, or worried about things failing if they stay out the ground for too long. But in this video I just wanted to share with you the first sowings that I've decided to make for April, and then have a look at this week's succession sowings that I'm making so that I can kind of keep continuous harvest going of certain crops. Well, that's the plan anyway. And then I just wanted to share a few mistakes that I'm trying to avoid, but I may well have already made some. Anyway, let's get going. So what are my first sowings for April? So I've got 6 plants that I'm sowing for the first time this month. There are obviously plenty of others that you can sow, but this is just what I'm sowing out of my list for the whole season. So I've got broccoli calabrese, which is a heading broccoli, so I'll get 1 head and I'll harvest that head, and then I might get some side shoots. So just bear in mind that if you're short on space, that may not be the best way to grow broccoli. It can also be succession sown too between now and June. And then I've got a first sowing of purple sprouting broccoli. This is going to give me side shoots and lots of them, but it's not going to give me anything until next season, so February time. So it's going to be in the ground a long time before I get any benefit from that, but I am looking to get better at growing food for the whole year, and this is a plant that I'm hoping will help me with that. Then dwarf French beans, a great variety, grown those before. They're really vigorous and they produce really well, so I think I'll probably sow about 3 cells of those for now. Then I might succession sow some more. You can freeze these, so they're a really good preservation food. And then these 3 along the bottom here, they're all from the cucurbit family, and they're all going to need heat to germinate. So we've got winter squash, butternut, a spaghetti squash with no sowing instructions, so I'm just going to wing it and do the same for my others. And then I've got an outdoor cucumber. I have already sown some cucumbers, but they're staying here in the greenhouse. But this is market more, and it's a good one for outside. So like I say, I will take those inside, put them on a heat mat, and then pop a propagator over the top because they need heat to germinate. So my in-ground first sowings for April are going to be dill and parsnips. Now, dill I've not grown before, but I'm growing it because I want to pickle some cucumbers, and dill pickles apparently are the way to go. So that's why I'm growing dill, and that suggests that you sow it directly in the ground, as it has quite a long taproot, which I wasn't expecting. So we'll put that in the ground today. And then parsnips as well, they're going to go in the ground today. We do eat parsnips. I have ummed and ahed about whether to grow them because they spend an awful long time in the ground before you benefit from the harvest. However, again, a bit like with the purple sprouting broccoli, I am trying to increase my harvest over the whole year, and so it makes sense to put parsnips in the ground, even if it's just a couple of square feet. So they will be sown today. So moving on to succession sowing, these are going to be succession sown in pots. So the top row is all leafy greens. We've got spinach, 2 types of lettuce, and a wild rocket, which have all been sown before, but I'm going to sow a few more cells of each of those. And then I've got spring onions, which I sow little and often. Cauliflower, because I had a few left and I think I've killed off some, so I don't need a ton of cauliflower, but I had some seeds left, so I thought I would just sow some more. And a bit similar with the peas really, I had 2 seeds left, so I have sown those seeds. And nasturtiums, I needed some more of those, and you can succession sow those, so that's what I am succession sowing in pots. And some worm castings. This is going to be an experiment. I'm not even sure I've even eaten dill. I must have done. I've certainly never bought it. What's the seed like? Small, I'm guessing. Multicoloured. Oops. That one just jumped. I'm a bit nervous, if I'm honest. I don't really know why. I can always pull it out the ground. These dill pickles better be yummy. Let's just give it a water. Oh. And then the wind can blow this stalk around a little bit, so there we go. See what happens to the dill. Okay, so this is where I'm going to sow the parsnips, and I'm going to do 3 rows. And then I'm just going to sprinkle them across each row, and then I'll thin them out probably to maybe 3 or 4 per row. I did have a quick look and they suggested, I think it was 3 parsnips per row. Just wait to see how many germinate and then I'll take it from there. So I'm going to do the same as I've been doing, which is adding a little bit of compost to the area and a little bit of worm castings, and then get going. I think some just jumped out. Oh, they're quite big seeds. I'd forgotten about that. So actually, yeah, I'm gonna lay 4 seeds across the row then. That's the case. The wind nearly blew them away. It's so funny, I'd forgotten what parsnip seeds were like. And 2 more. And I mustn't forget and remind myself that they take forever. So they take forever to get to maturity. So they're going to be in the ground for a long time, taking up this space. So that's 12 parsnips. Just give them a water. I'll just rake the strolch back over. Okay, parsnips done. So I do want to also just mention some mistakes that I've made. One of those is sowing too much. Obviously, it's not the end of the world if you sow too much, but whatever you sow, you have to look after, and it takes up your time, your resources, so compost, watering, and you've got to put it somewhere. So I have a greenhouse, but I have managed to basically fill my available space. I'm not sure that I need this number of basil plants, but that is what I've got. So it's just something to be mindful of. It's not necessarily a waste because you can put it on your compost and it will nourish your compost, but it might be a waste in terms of you're trying to save seeds and save money. Then you might want to be a little bit more mindful about the quantity of things that you sow. On the flip side of sowing too much is not sowing enough. So I sowed a few, I think it was probably, I don't know, 5 seeds in a pot of parsley. Only 2 of them germinated. 2 parsley plants is probably not going to be enough for me. So I'm just looking at potentially sowing some more or just buying some parsley plants from the garden centre. But we will see. They're going to go in the ground, so I'm hoping that each of those will turn into a really decent size little bushes. But 2 parsley plants is probably realistically not going to be enough. Thinking about just one of the recipes that I make, it uses a ton of parsley. So you can sow too much, but you can also not sow enough too. So another thing you just need to be made aware of, and it's a mistake that I've made, which is just not keeping an eye on the weather and putting things out too early, or enjoying the false springs that we can sometimes have. So I'm on the coast. I try to factor in the wind and ways to protect my seedlings from the wind. But also in April, we've got frost that we just need to be aware of. So my last hard frost date is around the 19th of April. But obviously that could happen at any time. It's just something to be aware of and to be ready. This cold frame here that I made has proven to be really helpful, and I use it as a step between the greenhouse and planting out. Got a little selection of things here that are ready, a section, little cluster in the middle there. They've been hardening off and they've taken some quite chilly temperatures and also some quite warm temperatures. So just be aware that frost could come and be ready for it, basically. That's all you need to do, is just have something ready for it. So I have this fleece here, which is in the greenhouse, and I've just popped it up over the back of one of the shelves, which I would then drape over any crops that need protection. My chilies, my tomatoes, they would be all put under there. So I always have that there just in case. And then finally, it's going back a little bit to sowing too much, but it's just thinking about the crops that you're sowing and how you can preserve them. So I'm really good at sowing far too many radish and far too much lettuce. You can't really preserve radish and lettuce. I do put them in the fridge and they're quite good in a Ziploc bag. They will last, a few days like that, but they won't and can't be frozen. You can't parboil them. They need to be eaten fresh. But things like, broccoli or even tomatoes, if you suddenly get a glut of tomatoes, you can chuck them in the freezer. If you get a glut of broccoli or cauliflower, you can freeze those. So just think about how you might preserve the crop. Do you even have a freezer available to start filling it with produce? Strawberries, if I suddenly got a glut of strawberries, I could freeze those as well. So preserving is one way to help with your over planting. If you've sown too much, preserving it can be one way, can be one solution. So that's it for my April sowings. I'm going to carry on succession sowing roughly every 2 weeks, I think, is what I'm aiming for. But it's just, somewhere to start. I'm going to keep notes and see how that goes, and I might adjust it if I need to. But that's it. That's April sowings done. I will keep you posted on how things are germinating and how things are growing. And I'm hoping in the next day or two to start planting the in-ground bed in the greenhouse. Good luck, everyone.